Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is now just 29 days away from its official release by Disney, Lucasfilm, creator George Lucas, and even director J.J. Abrams, that is all set and ready to end the sequel trilogy and the Skywalker saga itself. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing that a lot of people are very concerned about when it comes to Episode 9 has all to do with exactly how they are going to handle many of the characters like Rey, Kylo Ren, Palpatine, Luke, Lando, Han Solo, you name it. This movie really is going to have a lot of connections to the originals and the prequels in different ways than ever before. And that's exactly what J.J. Abrams wants to do. He actually has a plan in place to make this by far the darkest Star Wars film there is, out of the entire Skywalker saga. However, I'm not quite sure if that's really possible of topping Revenge of the Sith, but that's just my point of view on things. Now, with that being said, we do know that a lot of changes were made for this movie in, of course, August, September, October, and even in, of course, late 2019 of this year as we speak, where they were piecing together parts of the 3 different endings, which we'll get into in just a couple of seconds. Now, what's really intriguing and rather unfortunate about George Lucas has all to do with this. Now, it's explained that during the reshoots and rewrites of the film during the months of August, September, and October is when Disney and Lucasfilm were making many changes and adjustments to the film's second and third acts of the movie. It's explained that many of these changes came into play due to Kathleen Kennedy wanting a different vision or tone of the movie in general for a general audience that they were aiming for. It said that when George Lucas came on board for the film back in late 2018, he directed and wrote many scenes with, of course, George Lucas and J.J. Abrams for the movie, and that during the major changes, around 30% of the scenes that George shot were deleted from the film that were said to be the stronger and more emotional scenes that Lucas created and worked on with Abrams, and that George Lucas felt betrayed or ripped off of having those scenes deleted by Disney and Lucasfilm. Now, this change involved the cancellation of numerous flashbacks involving Luke Skywalker, Ben Solo, and others, and even scenes that involved Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, guiding Kylo Ren to the light side of the Force, and Palpatine sequences of him using a lightsaber, all of which were deleted. This was a part of Disney's massive shift and change to the film to approach the marketing in a different way, and that is the explanation of why the marketing of this film has been more poor in comparison to The Last Jedi's marketing of the movie before its release. Now, it's established that George helped Disney and Lucasfilm put the ending together into one piece by combining elements of all 3 endings that they were actually testing with. However, the ending that was a part of the George Lucas cut was put to the wayside and was not even considered to be used for pieces of the finalized ending of the movie by Disney and Lucasfilm. It's explained that the 30% of the George Lucas scenes that were not used for the movie, and that they wanted to use less of George Lucas's scenes for the entirety of the film. It said that the rewrites of the film also played a heavy role in this decision, and that George's scenes did not fit the current cut of the movie. As of now, Disney and Lucasfilm are making the final touches during post-production and are fixing, and after fixing, the ending with George Lucas and patching scenes together from start to finish of the movie, as well as making some fixes to the visual effects, all of which upped the budget of the movie, which could be a risk if the film does not do well at the box office on its release. That would lead to the film not making as much money as it should. Now, it's said that there were decisions and discussions to bring back the 30% of the Lucas deleted scenes between Kathleen Kennedy and others. However, that decision came to a close with, of course, keeping those scenes out of the movie, as they wanted to sit on a specific running time, as well as for The Rise of Skywalker, and that the cancellation of these scenes also led to the cancellation of some of John Williams' music/themes that were recorded over the summer of this year that will not be used in the current cut of Episode 9, once it releases in theaters in this December by Disney and Lucasfilm. So let's go over a couple of parts about this. Now, like I've always said before in the past, George Lucas is Star Wars. I mean, he is the man who created the franchise back in 1977 with Star Wars A New Hope. There's no denying that George knows Star Wars best, at least in my point of view. I think that George really knows that Star Wars, is what it really is at its very core. He knows exactly what Star Wars is. And say what you will about the prequels, yes, it did have a lot of flaws, but I feel like that the prequels were more true to Star Wars than how the sequel trilogy is being handled as of right now. That's just my honest opinion if I really had to be real with you guys. Now, when we think about Episode 9, a lot of fans are very concerned about how the current cut of Episode 9 is going to be once it releases in theaters, come, of course, this December. This is going to be a big deal because, let's face it, this movie is going to determine the future of the Star Wars franchise and where things will stand. You know, exactly where things are going to go on Disney+, what's going to happen with the new Star Wars trilogy, what's going to happen with Kathleen Kennedy and how things are going to be handled with Star Wars. Now, as we speak, they are restarting the Star Wars franchise, and what I mean by that is Disney and Lucasfilm are actually changing their ways of how they handle the franchise, and that apparently Jon Favreau, the man who wrote The Mandalorian, is going to have a say in the matter of every single Star Wars project moving forward, which could very well be a hint that he's going to take over Lucasfilm in the coming years. Now, again, Kathleen Kennedy and her contract is up in 2021, so she's almost done being the president of Lucasfilm unless she wants to expand her time over there. Again, I believe that she's like, 66 years old now? She's approaching the age of 70. You would think that she would want to retire by the age of 68, give or take, right? So, with that being said, the other piece that I do want to go over is how George felt betrayed of these scenes being deleted and how he felt ripped off, that Disney and Lucasfilm literally cut the stronger scenes, the ones that have more emotion to them. You know, a lot of them had to do with flashbacks of Luke Skywalker and scenes involving Anakin Skywalker's Force Ghost guiding Kylo Ren to the light side of the Force. All these different ideas, such as even Palpatine using a lightsaber, were cut from the movie. You know, you can see how they diminished moments for Episode 9 and kind of switched them out and changed things for either, you know, for better or worse, depending on, you know, what kind of Star Wars fan you really are. And when we look at Episode 9 here, you know, we do know that the sequel trilogy really needs some fixing. At least, you know, from a large chunk of the fan base, they will agree with me on that the sequel trilogy does need fixing, and that The Rise of Skywalker has the opportunity in doing that. And from everything that's going on, it seems like the chance of that actually happening is becoming thinner and thinner, at least the way I see things. Now, the other piece that I actually want to go over here is, of course, we do know that George Lucas is going to actually, you know, be involved with the ending of Episode 9. In fact, you guys may have heard a couple of days ago that, you know, he was very much involved with restructuring the entire ending of Episode 9, essentially using the 3 existing endings that they were testing with, and combining all pieces of those endings into one massive ending for Episode 9. And that, to me, sounds like it could. Not that it will be, but it could be a recipe for disaster. I don't know about you guys, but using elements from one ending and using elements from 2 other endings aside from that and combining them all into one big scene could very well show an inconsistency of certain emotions from the characters, as well as some of the visuals and the cinematography of those moments that were shot back in, of course, you know, early 2019 and late 2018. So that's just my take on things. I think that what they really should have done from the very start is just take a chance, stick with what they wanted to do with the George Lucas scenes. The 30% of those scenes were put to the wayside. Honestly, sounds like that they were the best of George Lucas's work for Episode 9. And we do know that he actually had a say in the matter for certain moments in The Mandalorian. That was only the tip of the iceberg of what he was actually doing. Just scratching the surface, right, of what George was going to do with the Star Wars franchise. Now, Kathleen Kennedy, like I say, I think that she needs to be replaced. That's just my opinion. I think that we deserve a better leader of Star Wars over at Lucasfilm as president, somebody that knows Star Wars better at its heart and at its core. That's something that I feel Kathleen Kennedy is not really all too in tune with. She doesn't really know Star Wars at its heart, and that's just how I feel, at least. So, the last piece I will say here is that George Lucas, you know, I love the guy. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have Star Wars at all to begin with. We wouldn't have Star Wars, you know, at all. With the originals, the prequels, the video games, the comics, the expanded universe. We wouldn't have Luke, we wouldn't have Vader if it weren't for George. So it only seems right to do so in order to actually have those 30% of the deleted scenes at the very minimum on the Blu-ray edition of this movie in 2020. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon we hear them moans again.